Okay, time for some fun. Today, our lesson deals with the future value function in Excel, one of my favorites. So let's talk future value. I would assume that nobody in this class came to college so they could work forever. And ultimately, your goal is to retire one day. Well, one thing the future value function can help you do, along with many other things, is help you figure out how much money you will have when you retire. So let's talk about retirement a little bit. In earlier videos, I asked you the question. I said, why do banks give loans? And we determined that banks give loans to make money, right? They take cash that's readily available, they loan it to someone that needs the money up front, and then that money is paid back in full with interest on top of it. So, the very same reason that banks give loans is the very same reason that you invest in stocks and bonds and in retirement funds like 401ks. So, let's just talk banks for a second. Hopefully, you understand that if you had $1 million and you took that $1 million and placed it in the bank is not going to actually take that $1 million and place it in a safe for you to come back and get when you need it. Nope. What the bank does is they take that money and they loan it back out. But in exchange for them holding your money and loaning it back out, you also earn interest because now the bank is holding your money. Okay. So when you invest in a 401k or when you buy a stock or when you buy a bond, you are basically giving a loan. You are loaning your money out for someone else to do something else with it. And in exchange, you get some type of return on investment. Okay. The future value function can help you determine exactly how much that would be based on specific inputs. So that's just a little bit of the background on the future value function and how it works. So today, to get introduced to the future value function, I want to talk to you specifically about 401ks, which is a pretty standard retirement plan that most people that work for-profit school or for-profit companies use. A 401k is an employer sponsored retirement account. Basically means you take some money out of your check pre-tax, you give it to your company or a company that your company works with, for example, an Edward Jones or Raymond James, and they invest that money for you until you retire as early as the age of 55, or it could go farther into your 70s. Okay. So with that tool, we're going to figure out, well, if you open up a 401k, well, how much money will you have when you retire? We're going to do that with the future value function. So first, let's go basics. Let's say we have a customer by the name of John. Okay. John. John's currently 22. Okay. He wants to retire. Let's say he wants to retire at the age of 65. Okay. He makes $45,000 a year and he's going to invest that in his company's 401k, which gets an APR, an annual percentage rate of return of 3%. Okay. Now he's not investing his entire $45,000 salary, right? He gets paid monthly and he still has to live, right? He's got to live. So all $45,000 a year is not going into this. So what he's going to do is he's going to make a monthly investment of 15% of his monthly salary, not annual salary, monthly salary. So that's very important. 15%. Well, actually, I don't even need to type it. It says right there, monthly. So in order to figure out how much money John will have when he retires at the age of 65, we are going to use the future value function. So why could we not just take 45,000 divided by 12, take 15% of whatever that is and multiply it by 3% for however many years that is? Because we're talking about compound interest versus simple interest, meaning that at the end of the first month, he's going to earn interest on his investment, and then that interest will earn interest. So he's going to actually compound interest over time. Okay, which is pretty standard when it comes to retirement accounts, something you would learn about in business calc if you haven't already. But let me promise you that using Excel is a lot easier to figure this out than you did in business calculus, the method used in business calc. So with that, let me introduce to you the future value function. Okay, like we always do the very first time, I'll use the insert function box and it will tell you exactly what the future value function does. It returns the future value of an investment based on periodic, hey, remember that buzzword, periodic, constant payments, and a constant interest rate. Okay, so it means you can't have a variable rate. That is a bear, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, so there are three arguments for the future value function that you must have, and there are five total arguments, two of which are optional. So the first argument for the future value function is rate. See a pattern? If you just got done watching the PMT video, you might remember that the first argument for PMT is rate. That's because almost every single financial function in Excel, with the exception of one that I can think of, uses the actual periodic interest rate as the first argument. So keep this in your mind. In Excel, not just in Excel, also on financial calculators, or if you're doing it by hand, whenever you see the word rate, rate stands for the periodic interest rate. Look, periodic interest rate. So that's the rate per period that you need to either earn or be charged for that financial transaction. Okay. Now, in this case, you've been given an APR, an annual percentage rate, but John is making monthly contributions. So that's too high. If you just use whatever it is, what was it, 3%? That's too much interest he'd be earning per period if we left it that way without adjusting it. We will adjust that. The second argument is NPER, total number of periods, okay? That's how many individual periodic payments John will make from the age of 22 to the age of 65. Now, here's where it gets interesting, right here. The third argument of the future value function is PMT. Ooh, that's confusing, right? Because there's a PMT function, but the PMT function is not the same as the PMT argument. The PMT argument, look, if I click it, it'll even tell you what it is the actual amount you are paying per period, okay? The specific dollar amount you're paying per period. $1,000,000 question that I'll answer once we write the function. Is that a positive or a negative number, okay? PV stands with present value. That's how much money you have currently right now, okay? Not how much money you'll have in the future, how much money you will have right now. And that's important because if you have money right now, if you have a set starting amount of money right now, say you have to open an account with $1,000, that $1,000 won't earn interest until the second month or the second period. If that was the case, if you could earn interest on your first investment on the first day, then you could just take $1,000, put it in the bank, take the interest out that same day, go to another bank, put that in the bank, take the interest out the same day, so on and so forth. So that doesn't work. Okay, and the type is 0 or 1, just like every other financial function. Okay, so again, it's periodic interest rate, total number of periods, total number of payment periods, the specific period payment amount. Okay, notice it cannot change. Okay, present value, which we just talked about, and the type, as you know from the prior video, it's either going to be 1 or 0. Okay, so let's use IntelliSense and let's write this thing. Now, here's the fun part. This is why I like this so much, okay? This is why you are in the School of Business and you're not just trying to freestyle an Excel function, okay? The future value function on its own isn't that complicated, but some of the logic that goes into this to get the argument values is not really complicated, but it's not easy either. You have to have a little business acumen under your belt in order to figure that out, okay? So let's go ahead and jump in. So we're going to start by hitting the equals key, and we're going to do FV and hit tab. Then you'll see IntelliSense trying to help us, right? It says, give me the rate. Now, when you see that, you know that it's the periodic interest rate. So now the given rate was 3%. However, John is making monthly contributions, which means that that 3% annual is too high. He's paying a 1/12 of that. So we're going to divide that 3% by 12. There we go. Now the next argument is NPER. Okay, you know that that stands for total number of periods. Okay, now this is a little tricky and there are a lot of ways you can do it, but I prefer to do this in the function to keep it simple and to make sure that it's dynamic and changing if we want to use this like a retirement calculator. So here's what I'm going to do. He wants to retire at the age of 65. So I'm going to go ahead and hit D16. Okay, he's currently 22. All right, so we're going to close that off. Now here's the deal. If you just take 65 minus 22, that'll tell you how many years he is investing in his retirement account. That's not how many total investments he's making. That's how many years he's paying into it. Now, if we take that and we multiply it by 12, that's going to tell us how many total payments John is making in his 401k between the age of 22 and 65. We hit comma to advance to the next argument. Now, the next argument is payment. Now, this is $1 million question, isn't it? So the payment is tricky because I'm just going to hit this negative sign, and I'll go back and explain why in just a second. But I'm going to go ahead and hit a negative sign there, and I'm going to say he's going to make $45,000. Now, if I just do this, if I just put in $45,000 into payment because he makes $45,000 a year, first of all, his future value at retirement is going to be huge because that means for 30 plus years, he would be putting in $45,000 a year at 3% return. That is incorrect. He's not putting that much in, okay? He's putting in 15% of his monthly paycheck, okay? 15% of monthly. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that 45,000, we're going to divide it by 12. That is going to give us his monthly take home. Remember, it's pre-tax. So we don't have to take any tax out for 401ks, all right? Pre-tax. Very important, accounting majors. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply that by 15%. Why? Because it's 15% of his monthly salary, not his annual salary. Now, there is no present value here because he doesn't have to have money for an opening investment. It does not specify, I don't think it specifies. Yeah, it does. It specifies the end of the month, which means that the type is 0. So if it's 0, you can leave it blank. So if I go in and close this off, I find out that at the age of 65, John will have $591,000 and some change. So 591.6221, the future value function. Okay, so let's take a look at that. That's pretty complicated compared to some of the things we did at the beginning, but it is a very, very useful tool because it's telling us with interest over time how much money, if all constants stay the same, you can accrue over a duration. Very important. Now, this is in your book, but like everything else, it requires practice, practice, practice. So there's going to be some assignments on my IT lab, but I've also given you inside this document some additional things that you can practice with. So first of all, let's skip over to the future value intro. Okay, this is available for you on Moodle, so please do it for me. Just practice this a little bit. And here's what I've done. I've given you the answers in advance. So if you're making an investment of $1,000 per year, over 12 years with an annual interest rate of 5%, how much will you have at the end? Well, here's the deal. The answer is $15,917. I want you to get there on your own, but I've given you the answer so you know. Okay? Here's another one. Same thing. An investment of $100 at the end of the month over 12 years, annual interest rate of 5%. Here's another one. Answer negative $19,676. Interesting. Why is that negative? And this one positive. Remember me telling you something about the PMT argument just a second ago? Well, if you don't remember, let's go back over and let's talk about this right here, the PMT argument of the future value function. Okay, so you might remember in our prior video for payment, I told you that Excel knows accounting. It knows inflows and it knows outflows. And I told you it depends on if you are the person making the loan or if you are the person giving the loan. Well, if you are the person making an investment right now, then this payment dollar amount right here, this payment amount that you've calculated is a negative number. It's negative because that's a set amount of money that's coming out of your pocket into the bank until the age of 65. Now, does it mean that you don't own that money? No. That money is yours. However, you can't have it until you're 65, and it's money that's going out of your liquid account. So in the eyes of accounting, that is an outflow. Now, that means when you get to 65, you have an inflow of 591.6221, assuming that 3% holds. Okay? Now, let's say that you're the bank. You're not the one making the investment. You're the one that's getting the investment, getting the loan. Well, that becomes a positive number, right? Every month, the bank is getting an inflow of cash. Okay? But at the end of over 30 years, they're going to have to give back 591.6221. Now, why did I say it's oh so tricky? Well, it's tricky because now when you go into these story type problems or these word problems, you have to read it and figure out the context. Are you the bank or are you the consumer? because depending on who you are, it's going to be a positive or a negative. Sneaky, right? I know. So on your own time, please try these. I'm not going to grade you on them. You have a different assignment and you have some quizzes coming up on this. And I can promise you that it's on the final. Okay, so try this. Try these problems with the answers. Then try this on your own. You fill in your own information and figure out how much money you will have at retirement. It might be a little bit of a research problem for you, but then this is also kind of an eye opener, right? You want to have $1 million when you retire. How much do you need to make? How much do you need to invest? Okay. So please feel free to check out the handout that I have on future value function and financial problems in Excel. Please check out the textbook. It does a lot of good stuff talking about it and has a lot of additional problems. As always, if you have any questions at all, if there's anything else you need from me, please call me, tweet me, chat me, send me a text. I always love to hear from you guys. So I look forward to talking to you. Present value is up next, another really, really fun problem. So I will talk to you soon. So until then, we are signing off.